Hey guys, I swear I will be powering the set back up in this video. I'm almost done with the wiring. I wanted to point out a few things I've picked up along the way while rewiring this. One, the wire itself. I did end up replacing more of it than I thought I would, simply because this old wire, it's kind of brittle to work with and the colors have faded. Some of the wire, when I was unwinding it, broke off, and the insulation was kind of crusty when I bent the wire. This original, as near as I can make out, was 22 gauge, and that's what I used for the replacement stuff, which I believe I got from Radio Days. I googled this part number, but they no longer carry this stuff. They only have a small, limited supply of stranded and cloth covered. They don't really have any of the solid stuff left. I did Google all the verbiage I could find on the wire, and I saw some people in other forums looking for it as well. I got a feeling this stuff isn't made anymore. But I did find similar stuff made by Alpha Wire, and some stuff sold by a couple vendors that specialize in tube amp supplies. So it is out there. 600 volt plastic insulated solid core wire. Anyways, something else I discovered is that a lot of these wires, maybe half, go to the two control clusters: horizontal, vertical, hold and brightness, and power, volume, contrast. That's mostly what I have left. So these are 3 for volume, a bunch for contrast, 1 for power, and then a whole bunch went to this control cluster. I could have left all those wires connected and simply flipped the board over and left all these wires attached. That would have saved me some time. Also, I've come to realize that a lot of these are labeled. For example, right here, CONTR arm, contrast arm. That goes to one side of the contrast control. When you see arm on the board, they mean one side of the potentiometer. If it says wiper, that means it's the center. And similar here, we've got CRT screen focus and focus ground. There is that one connector on the CRT socket for the electrostatic focus, then go to 1 of 2 potentials. So these are the two, here or over here. You choose whichever one gives you better focus, and so on. Audio out, audio B+. These two go to the audio output transformer. So the more you do this, the easier it seems to me. It makes more sense. So I've got a few of these wires left to hook up, and then replace some of the parts here I left off to the end because they go over the wires. That'd be a power resistor, a couple electrolytics. Pop the tubes back in. I think that will be it. Now, speaking of tubes, something else I was pleasantly surprised by is I was saying earlier that tubes are a little bit hard to get in and out of these new porcelain sockets. Not so once they're attached, because there's actually secure points for the board here and one over here. So this area of the board is actually pretty rigid. And having that stable makes the tubes much easier to get in and out. So I really don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. Works a lot better if you use 2 hands too. Hold down the board with one hand while you're pulling the tube with the other. I finished rewiring. I reinstalled all the tubes, hooked up the tuner with a new pilot light, got the picture tube assembled enough to just hook it up. I anticipate the horizontal frequency is going to be way off, assuming this set even powers up, so I already got a tool ready to go. What are the odds that I didn't get a single thing wrong? Well, let's find out. I also have a voltmeter on the main B+ supply, so I can monitor that, and here we go. Current draw went way up, went down. The tubes are lighting up. B+ is at 312 volts. Dropping a bit. A little too much, maybe. be 275 volts rather than 255. Let's see. Huh, we do have a raster of sorts. It's very dim. No sound. Let's see what we can do. Oh, it's kind of fading out. Turn the brightness up. Oh yeah, the holds are way off. Let's see. The picture is fading out. I keep turning up the brightness. So we got horizontal hold. About vertical hold. It's an okay picture, but it's like disappearing before my very eyes. You guys probably can't even see it anymore, if you're able to see it at all. B plus is holding pretty steady at 252. Turn it off. So something's not right. The picture actually looked pretty good. It's just that it kept fading and fading, and I was increasing the brightness control again and again until I ran out of range on it, and I just turned the set off. It smells like something might be overheating a little bit, but nothing smoking. Nothing seems to be really amiss. Kind of a little bit of a sniff test. Power resistors actually are fairly cool. We had no... Well, we had kind of like a background buzz, kind of hum, and now I did mess with the coil, so I may very well need to align the sound. That could be why we don't have any, so I'm not too concerned about that right now, except that maybe a clue as to why the image faded away, if there's something wrong with the sound circuit. Because I do believe that... Let me take a look. Well, some sets use a stacked B plus design where they use an audio output tube in classic operation as a voltage divider. This does not seem to do that. But I do want to make sure that this plus 140 volt bus is okay. So I'm going to move my voltmeter to the other side of this power resistor down here. And let's try this again. So it should be about 140 volts. We're at 240 right now. Imagine I'll drop as this powers up. Yep. We got a washed out image back. That's what the gain cranked up all the way with the local distance switch. Maximum contrast. Picture tube is like, ooh, really funky looking. That's the brightness cranked up all the way. Just wiggling the plugs for the CRT, and it's kind of fading out. Voltage is staying pretty steady though. So B plus is steady. All the tubes are glowing normally, but the picture keeps fading out as the set warms up. So what the heck is going on? And when I turn the set off, I get a bright dot that fades away. So either as something heats up or as a capacitor slowly charges, it's having some kind of effect. We have a high voltage probe and see, is the high voltage fading, or because if the high voltage is staying steady but the picture fades, That sounds more like one of the voltages on G1 or G2 is fading out. Alright, another power up test. With the high voltage cage out of the way, I get the high voltage probe right down in there on the anode. And we got 13,500 volts, almost 14. And the picture is super crazy out of focus. I do have one other thought. So, this set had been rewired for 17BZ-P4 as memory serves. A lot of the other 110, 120 degree deflection 17-inch CRTs had G1 and G2 flipped on CRT. I wonder if when I rewired this, I hooked things up to the wrong CRT. So yeah, I guess I can just quickly look that up and make sure. I want to make sure that if I have G1 and G2 reversed, that could very well be accounting for this funkiness. Yes, indeed. Excuse my crude drawing here, but 17BZ-P4 has G1 on pin 2 and G2 on pin 3. The original 17DA-P4 had G2 on pin 2 and G1 on pin 3. So I have to flip 2 and 3, and then hopefully we will get a decent picture. I flipped G1 and G2. Let's do another power-up test. Well, that looks more promising. Oh yeah. A little lost in space action. Curious about the focus, though. When I make it brighter, the focus is just completely shot. You can tell it by watching these up here, which should just be sharp little narrow dashes. I turn the brightness down, I get sharper. So I can try changing that jumper. So I think the high voltage was a little low, so I was measuring. What was I measuring? 13,000 or so? I think it's supposed to be 15,000. So let me test that again. $14,000. Well, that's pretty close. So I don't think there's anything horribly off on that. So we have absolutely no sound. What's going on with that? Well, could be the alignment is incredibly far off because I tinkered around with this coil. So I'll try twiddling that a little bit and see if I can get just a hint of sound. I can probably do it enough by ear so we can hear something. So I have a really good, clear, sharp picture right now. So let's see. We'll probably have to break out some test equipment and do a proper alignment to get the sound back. But otherwise, aside from no sound and the focus being a little weird, I spoke too soon. Well, it seems we've got a problem. A pretty big problem. I think the power transformer is shot. I've disconnected everything down to where all I've got is the two filaments, and when I turn the set on, I keep tripping the circuit breaker in my PR57. The tubes light up, but eventually trips the breaker. The set is drawing a ton of current. The transformer is getting pretty darn toasty. When I measured the resistance on the secondary, it's less than what it should be, about half of what it should be. And while I still had it hooked up to this, the B plus was less than half of what it should be. So I think the secondary has got a short in it. The secondary high voltage winding. I've never had a transformer go out of me before in any project ever, which makes me wonder, was it because I soaked this chassis? I only did it briefly in a utility sink. I didn't completely submerge it. I just ran water over it. And it bake in the oven for, I don't know, half an hour or so. So it's hard to say. Was it because I got moisture in here and I didn't bake this long enough? Was it because of all this abuse, all the abuse this set has lived through, that it just finally just gave up? I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know. So what are we going to do about it? It sucks, but at least I've got a spare or two. So I've got the sets that I salvaged a while ago, like the one where I got the yoke out of for this. But I also bought a Predicta Princess chassis off of eBay ages ago, like 10 years ago, and scavenged some parts out of it, including the power transformer. Now what's curious is this transformer and this and all the other ones I've ever seen. I'll say Philco, they got a Philco part number, but not this one. This is a Stancor. Stancor P8379. But the size and shape and the specs are correct. So, the set that this came from, did somebody have a problem with that set and they replaced the power transformer? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the history of the set that this came from was, but it should just plop right in. Now, it's going to be a bit of work, that's for sure. Got to take 4 bolts out. I got to remove the wiring. We've got 2 wires for the primary. We've got 6.3 volts for the secondary, the low voltage for the original CRT. I suppose I should re-hook up just in case it ever gets switched to using that kind of CRT. And then there's the higher voltage secondary. These wires are all brittle and buried down in here. It's going to take me a while. So, I mean, at least I've got one, but yeah, that's a bit of a setback. I suppose there's at least a small silver lining. Now I get to clean out underneath the power transformer. There was some rust down there. and got that cleaned up. And while I was removing the old transformer, I did notice that this red wire down here, see up with the voltage doubler going to the filter choke, was kind of pinched. Enough that potentially the insulation was getting a little smushed. I don't really think that would have caused the problem though, because we did have B+, so slowly fading. I mean, if maybe it was arcing through the insulation, but a voltage doubler is kind of self-limiting because it can only pump through so much charge through these caps, and there's also there was a fusible resistor in that circuit. So again, maybe it was time for that transformer to just go. A little more inclined to think it's because I got it damp. And I was thinking about it. Best I can remember, I had it in the oven for maybe 45 minutes with the heat on, and I let it sit in there and slowly cool down for like an hour. And that was about a week and a half ago. And I tried not to get water directly into it, but I mean, I've heard it time and again that it can be a real bear to get all the moisture out of transformers. And maybe I should have left it in the oven for 6 hours. Maybe I shouldn't have done it at all. Maybe I should have removed the power transformer, or plugged up the hole where the wires come out with some wax or something. I don't know. But for sure, before I ever dunk a whole chassis again, I'm going to take more care with the transformers. I mean, I'm very lucky to have a spare that I'm pretty sure is good. That's definitely not going to be the case for most of my other sets. Well, that's not something I ever want to do again, but power transformer has been replaced. Also replaced the across the line capacitor, which I'd failed to do earlier. Removed the IF shield so I could remove the corrosion. Right now I want to try powering it up with a new transformer. No fusible resistor, so just have power going to the tube filaments. Excellent. Pilot lights glowing, tube filaments all lit. Current draw seems reasonable at about 0.6 amps. Alright. Let's see, grab a speaker and put the fusible resistor in, and let's try this again. Alright, I've got all the B+ hooked back up on the main board, so let's try this again. Well, here's signs of life. Hey, we got a picture back. Looks terrible. Oh, there we go. Huh. Linearity is terrible because remember I don't have a linearity control. I just have a fixed resistor in place of it. Cool. I'm curious about that focus, though. But otherwise, hey, that's a great picture, considering all the set's been through. Now, if I can just figure out the sound, which is going to require an alignment, I'm sure, after all the monkeying I did with that one transformer. I'm just messing with the controls right now. Really solid vertical hold. Same with horizontal. I'm rotating the horizontal and vertical hold controls almost through their entire range, and I'm not losing lock. That is a really, really nice picture. Except when something's really bright, the focus goes out. I think it made sense to me. I swapped out the high voltage rectifier, it made no difference. It got me thinking, the only thing that makes any sense really is that the focus pin is not doing what it's supposed to do, so I fiddled around with it more and I discovered it just wasn't making good contact. So when I put it in this position, it definitely improved. So disconnected and connected, disconnected, connected. So, there with it firmly in place, I can make the brightness go up a lot higher than I could before, and the picture still, well, it looks better. It's still at the extreme end. It kind of blooms, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was before. And yes, that horizontal burn line is extremely visible. I get the contrast up all the way now too, and before it was causing some issues. So I'm quite happy with this picture. There's some interference, but remember I've got zero shielding installed right now on this set. I'm surprised it's actually not a lot worse. I think that is a very, very fine, watchable picture. I think I may have figured out one of the issues with the sound. So I tuned this set to channel 6, which in our area is basically, it's an FM radio station at 87.7. Really weak video carrier, but a very strong audio carrier. I can just barely hear it. I notice that the volume control doesn't do anything. Well, what the heck? So I checked my wiring. These 3 wires here. Black is ground for the shielding, and this says top volume control, but I put the other wire here which says tone control, and then this says volume control arm. I've got that wire in the wrong spot. There are some versions that have a tone control. This does not. That would go in the 4th spot here on this control. I suppose I could add one if I really wanted to soup this up a little bit, but anyways, I think if I make that little correction there. I also tried tweaking these coils, sound coils, thinking that, hey, now that I can hear a station, or hear some sound, I should be able to at least get a little bit better by ear, and these didn't do anything. I think that's why. Yet another power-up test. Let's see if we have some more volume now. Yeah. Alright, so now I'm going to see if I can tweak the coils and get the sound any better. What do you know? You have sound.
And the summit of his knowledge. This is the
no, I just did this by ear and I can hear it's distorted.
Which we call the twilight zone.
But we have sound. Excellent. I think that's going to be it for this installment. I'll pick up after the cable harness arrives and I've studied up on the alignment procedure and got my test equipment ready.